Assessment Curriculum and Technology Research Center, or ACTRC, we have Dr. Kevin Carl Santos, Senior Research Fellow, who is also an Associate Professor at the Educational Research Area of UP College of Education. From the Southeast Asian Ministers of Education Organization Regional Center for Educational Innovation and Technology, or SEAMEO Innotech, we have the former DepEd Secretary who is now the Center Director, Dr. Leonor Magtolis Briones, together with Dr. Josdado M. San Antonio and Attorney Nepomuceno Malaluan. From the Philippine Normal University, we have the Vice President for Academics, Dr. Marilyn Balagtas. From the University of the Philippines College of Education, we have Dr. Liza Marie Olegario, Dr. Portia Padilla, Dr. Alan Canonigo, Dr. Erlina Ronda, and Dr. Ivy Mejia. From the UP Open University Faculty of Education, we have the Dean, Assistant Professor Cherise T. Reyes. From the Philippine Business for Education, currently present is Mr. Lawrence Malasa and Ms. Marie Genevieve Bautista. From the Philippine Association of Private Schools, Colleges, and Universities, or PAPSCO, we have Dr. Antonio Del Carmen, the President. Last but not the least, from the MLAC Institute for Psychosocial Services Incorporated, we have the Executive Director, Ms. Hannah Misha Murillo, and a psychologist, Dr. Marie Tesibeth Cordova. We're still waiting for our resource persons from the EDCOM2 and from OECD, Mr. Andreas Schleicher, who will be joining us at 12 noon via Zoom. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Comsec. Once again, good morning to everyone, and thank you for joining us today. This is a motu proprio hearing on the results of the 2022 PISA. Last last year, December 6, 2023, the DepEd invited all education stakeholders to unveil and also give their analysis on the country's result, on the country's 2022 PISA results. And I was there together with other stakeholders. And my 2 cents reaction to the 2022 results can be described with a good news and a bad news. Good news is, despite the pandemic that closed our schools for almost 2 years, no, a year and a half, we did not regress. No? And my own expectation was, because a lot of our kids had problems learning by themselves, or they couldn't go to school, or they have difficulty in access to teachers and to gadgets, we could have regressed. But the results was a pleasant surprise to all of us that we did not regress. And the bad news is we stayed stagnant. No? We're at the same level. But there's also an opportunity to that. No? Being a finance person, when you are at the bottom, there's no way but to go up. No? And that's what we want to discuss today. No? How do we go up? How do we implement solutions so that we will improve learner performance? To be honest about it, and Secretary Briones knows about it, I was one of those who was not in favor of taking the 2022 PISA. Because my own analysis is it takes time for reforms to be implemented and to be felt. No? But I was happy that I was overruled by Secretary Briones, and we took the 2022 PISA. And the change of mind, well, my realization is it's good to track down our results periodically, no? Whether it's good or bad, but the periodic tracking gives us many insights, gives us deeper understanding of our problems, and as a result, it will generate deeper solutions. Hopefully, no, we can generate deeper solutions so that we can implement meaningful reforms. So the results, as we all know, is statistically the same from 2018 to 2022, and we want to hear officially. No, the invitation last December 6 is a invitation from DepEd to discuss with stakeholders, but the committee deemed it necessary to have an official discussion to be recorded in the books of the Senate on what are the results of PISA, what is the analysis of DepEd, and what are the um, solutions moving forward that we can implement. We also invited various stakeholders today to discuss their insights, their analysis, as also their recommendations. But most importantly, we invited top performing regions. No? And we're very honored that Dr. Carino, who's celebrating her birthday today, is aptly with us because uh, Cordillera region, consistently, no, from 2018 to 2022, is considered a top performing PISA um, achiever. No? And we want to learn from them. No? Napakagaling nila. Eh, no? We want to learn what they have been doing. We want to learn what reforms they've undertaken. We want to learn from no? on their top performing achievement. At the same time, we also invited the Calabarzon, Region 4A, because Region 4A also performed very well in the 2022 PISA. And also NCR. No? Dr. Anday, you're representing NCR? Okay. And NCR, no, no I was confused, no, because you wear so many hats, eh, no. But okay, but NCR is also was also also performed very well in the 2022 PISA. No? So we want to analyze the consistency as well, no? And we want to analyze why they are top performing. These three regions, why they are top performing, and later on we will request from the three regions to allow us to visit your schools. No? We would like to go down to the specific school and observe and talk to our teachers, parents, and students and learn from them on how come they are performing very well compared to our other regions. In NCR, some of them even perform beyond above OECD level, no? Which is quite phenomenal. No? And again, we want to learn from those top performing schools. So today we'll be first of all discussing the results. We will be discussing the analysis, especially coming from DepEd, and we will invite the stakeholders to join in and share with us their analysis and recommendations. And then later on, we will hear from the three regions who perform very well, no? Beyond expectations of everyone, and to share with us what they have been doing in order to maintain their quality and also to perform very well in the 2022 PISA results. And today we're very fortunate that we're joined by one of our esteemed senators, Senator Nancy Binay. So welcome, ma'am. Any opening remarks?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Magandang umaga po sa lahat. We can already proceed, Mr. Chairman, dahil marami ho tayong resource person this morning.
Thank you for that, and thank you for joining us in this very important hearing. So we'll start off with a presentation from DepEd, the results of the 2022 PISA, their analysis, and of course, what's important is moving forward, no recommendation. It's not enough that we know the situation, but what's important is how do we move forward and improve our performance. I understand that the next PISA will be in 2025. No? So we have 3 years to go. So we also want to know what are the low-hanging fruits that we can pick in the next 3 years and see some incremental improvements. Ano na ba? 2020. Sorry. Ang bilis ng panahon. Eh, no? Next year na pala. Sorry, bilis po ng panahon. In the next 24 months, no? 24. Kasi end of 2025 yan, tama? When is it? April. So in the next 12 months more or less, no? So yeah. So we'll listen to DepEd on their ways forward. So we now call on DepEd for the presentation.
Good morning, honorable senators and my colleagues in DepEd, former Secretary Briones and USEC Nepomuceno, my colleagues also in other research agencies. In behalf of the Bureau of Education Assessment, which is the National Center for the PISA National Team, we are presenting the performance of the Philippines in PISA 2022. PISA 2022 was administered in March to May 2022 prior to the return to in-person classes. A total of 7,193 15-year-old students from 188 schools, 106 divisions, and 16 regions, which represents 83% of the total population of 15-year-old students in the country, completed the test. The sampling was done using a two-stage sampling design. In the first stage, schools were sampled systematically based on the proportion of PISA eligible students enrolled. In the second stage, 42 students within each sample school were drawn randomly. The test was delivered as a computer-based assessment using English as the language of the test, since the language of instruction for the PISA subjects is English. What is PISA? PISA, or the Program for International Student Assessment, is a triennial comparative study around the world that tests 15-year-olds' ability to use their knowledge and skills in reading, mathematics, and science to real-world situations. It is designed and developed by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD, and since 2000, it has been participated by many regions around the world. In 2022, 81 education systems participated in PISA, including the Philippines. PISA assessments do not just ascertain whether 15-year-old students can reproduce what they have learned. They also examine how well students can extrapolate from what they have learned and apply their knowledge in unfamiliar settings both in and outside of school. For each cycle, PISA focuses on a major domain and includes an innovative domain. In the PISA 2022 survey, mathematics was the major domain of assessment, while reading and science are the minor areas of assessment, and creative thinking as the innovative domain. How are scores reported in PISA? PISA scores do not necessarily represent the number of items our students answered correctly on the test. Instead, PISA scores are interpreted as the ability scores of the students, providing information about what they know and what they can do in a specific domain of assessment, such as math, reading, or science. Given their computed ability scores, students can be arranged from the most to least proficient on a PISA scale. This scale is partitioned into several levels, usually ranging from level 1 to level 6, each with a specific description of what students know and can do at each level. Based on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, level 2 is the minimum proficiency level that students must achieve in order to participate in society. In my next slides, I will present the average performance of Filipino students in the different domains of assessment in PISA, the descriptions of their performance, and performance gaps across subgroups in comparison to the averages of OECD countries and select education systems. Additionally, a comparison between the Philippines' performance in PISA 2018 and 2022 will be presented. How does the Philippines fare in mathematics? As the major domain of assessment for PISA 2022, I will give highlights on the results related to mathematics performance. Shown in this slide is a graph showing how the Philippines fare against 80 other participating countries and economies in PISA 2022. Five education systems are below our average: Guatemala, El Salvador, Dominican Republic, Paraguay, Cambodia, and two are at par with our performance. That's Panama and Kosovo. How does the Philippines fare in mathematics? To get a closer look at our results, shown in the graph are the top 10 countries' economies, Southeast Asian countries, and those that perform statistically lower than the Philippines. The average of the members of the OECD countries is 472 points, which is at level 2 of the PISA scale. At this level, at the minimum, students can interpret and recognize without direct instructions how a simple situation can be represented mathematically. In comparison, the Philippines' average score is 355 points. This average is located at level 1B of the PISA scale. At a minimum, students at this level can respond to questions involving easy to understand context, which are clearly given in a simple representation. How does the Philippines fare in reading? Again, shown in the graph are the top 10 countries' economies, Southeast Asian countries, and those that perform statistically lower than the Philippines in reading. OECD has an average score of 476 in reading, which is at level 2. At a minimum, these students can identify the main idea in a text of moderate length, find information based on explicit, though sometimes examples, sometimes complex criteria, and can reflect on the purpose and form of text when explicitly directed to do so. Meanwhile, the Philippines average 347 is at level 1A. At a minimum, these students can understand literal meaning of sentences or short passages, locate information within short text, and can reflect on the purpose and relative importance of information in simple text. Given the Philippines' average score in reading, two countries are below our average performance, Uzbekistan and Cambodia, and five are on par, Dominican Republic, Palestinian Authority, Kosovo, Jordan, and Morocco. How does the Philippines fare in science? For science, the OECD average is 485, which is at level 3. At a minimum, these students can use moderately complex knowledge to explain familiar scientific phenomena and can use procedural or epistemic knowledge to carry out a simple experiment in a constrained context. The Philippines average is 356, which is at level 1A. At a minimum, these students can use basic knowledge to identify correct explanations for simple scientific phenomena, and with support, these students can undertake scientific investigations with no more than two variables. In science, only Cambodia was below our average. They three are on par with our performance, Dominican Republic, Kosovo, and Uzbekistan. How does the Philippines compare in 2022 to 2018? The non-significant change in between the 2018 and 2022 average scores of the Philippines suggests that performance of 15-year-old students in the Philippines in the three subject domains math, reading, and science remains stable despite the COVID-19 pandemic situation in our country. What proportion of students achieve the minimum proficiency? Other the Other the average score, on the average score, we also present the number of students that reach at least the minimum proficiency level expected of our students. Similar to 2018, still a large proportion of 15-year-old students, more than 75% in the Philippines, were below the minimum level of proficiency in mathematics, science, and reading. Specifically, only 16% in mathematics, 24% in reading, and 23% in science reach at least level 2, which is the minimum proficiency level. Performance gap within the Philippines in terms of socioeconomic differences. Students from socioeconomically disadvantaged homes scored better than their disadvantaged peers in math, reading, and science. An important finding in PISA 2022 is that the performance gap related to socioeconomic status narrowed in the Philippines, and that some 12% of disadvantaged students in the Philippines were able to score in the top quarter of mathematics performance in the country.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go ahead.
siguro ano lang, pag sinabi mong disadvantage, ano yung definition?
They have low socioeconomic status.
Not necessarily pag public school ho, automatic.
Not
They belong to
necessarily.
the disadvantage.
Yes.
Okay. Thank
Yes
you,
po.
Mr. Chairman.
Performance gap within the Philippines gender. Girls outperform boys in all three domains of assessments. The average scores of girls in math and reading were in level 1A, while boys at level 1 are in level 1B. Both boys and girls were at level 1A in science. Compared to 2018, there was no significant change in the performance between boys and girls in math and science. In reading, the difference decreased by 8 score points. Performance gap within the Philippines in terms of school management. Students attending private schools scored higher than those in the public schools. Students in the private schools were at level 1A in math and science, while public school students were at level 1B. In reading, students in private schools were in level 2, minimum proficiency level, while students in the public schools were at level 1B. Performance gap within the Philippines school location. Schools located in a more organized, urbanized areas rather scored higher than those situated in less urbanized locations. Also, the proportion of students who reached the minimum proficiency level was higher in more urbanized areas. Well-being and investment for education success. In the next slides, this will be on learning continuity in the Philippines during the pandemic, describing how schools and students responded to the educational disruptions and its effect on students' learning and well-being. I will also cover how in education are related to students' performance and well-being. Note that the data were taken from the questionnaires responded to by the students and the school principals during the main survey data collections. Their responses were summarized, scaled, and are reported as averages or percentages. Students' sense of belonging rather at school and satisfaction with life. Compared to 2018, students' sense of belonging at school declined in the Philippines. 28% of the schools reported that they feel lonely at school or feel like an outsider at school. Similar to many countries and economies, student satisfaction with life can also decline in Philippines. 17% reported that they were not satisfied with their lives. Learning during the COVID-19 pandemic. While students in the Philippines reported varying experiences with remote learning, they generally reported a more positive experience with learning at home in comparison to the OECD countries on average. 4 out of the 5 students reported that remote learning had improved their skills in using digital devices for learning purposes and that their teachers were well prepared to provide instructions remotely and were available to offer assistance when needed. During remote learning, students in the Philippines encountered more challenges, more so among girls, compared to their counterparts from OECD countries. For instance, 41% reported having problems understanding their school assignments. 35% had difficulty finding someone who could help them with their schoolwork, and 36% faced challenges managing their time between study and household responsibilities. These challenges, however, were not significantly associated with a decrease in math scores. In the use of digital devices, 15-year-olds in the Philippines spend approximately a total of 10.7 hours per day on digital resources, whether for learning activities, 6 hours, or leisure, 4.7 hours. These digital resources include computers, laptops, and tablets. A 1 hour increase in the time spent per day on digital devices for learning at school had increased mathematics score by 3 points, but decreased by 4 points when this is used for leisure. The language at home. Only 7% of the students reported that they speak English at home most of the time. In PISA 2022, students who speak English at home most of the time scored significantly lower than those who speak a language other than English in all assessment domains. Both groups, however, were at the same level of proficiency. Performance differences based on language at home were not observed in 2018. Teacher support in math classes. The level of support provided by teachers to their students in the Philippines was significantly higher than the OECD countries on average. Students who were attending classes with supportive teacher in most or every mathematics lessons scored from 17 to 27 points higher than those who received lesser support. 81% of the students reported that their teacher helped students with their learning and even gave extra help when needed. On the disciplinary climate in math classes, there seems to be a need for our math teachers to improve on their classroom management skills. On average, students reported a negative disciplinary climate in their mathematics lessons in the Philippines. A considerable proportion of students reported that they study mathematics in a disciplinary climate that is not favorable to learning. 14% of the students reported that their teacher has to wait for a long time for students to quiet down. 29% reported that students do not listen to what the teacher said. A 1 unit increase in the disciplinary climate index, indicating a more positive environment, led to a 16-point increase in students' mathematics score. Feeling safe at and around school. The index of feeling safe at school was relatively low in the Philippines compared to the OECD countries. On the average, 19% of the students reported that they feel unsafe at places like corridor or canteen in school, and 10% reported that they feel not safe on their way home from school. The feeling of being unsafe at school and was more commonly reported among girls than boys. For each unit increase in the index of feeling safe at home, there was a 9-point increase in students' performance in mathematics. After accounting for the socioeconomic profiles of both students and schools. On bullying, the incidence of bullying in schools in the Philippines had decreased between 2022 and 2018. However, it remained a pervasive problem more so among boys and those in public schools. Almost 1 in every 3 students reported experiencing bullying at school at least once a week. Students who experienced bullying at least a few times a month scored 11 to 44 points lower in mathematics. On student truancy. Student truancy was measured by asking students how many times they had skipped classes or days of school 2 weeks prior to the PISA test. In the Philippines, at least 1 in every 4 students reported having skipped at least one class or day of school, with a higher prevalence among socioeconomically advantaged students. Boy, boys, socioeconomic students, boys and those attending public schools. Students who reported having skipped at least a class or day of school scored 25 points lower in mathematics. On long-term absenteeism is defined as having missed school for more than 3 months in a row. The incidence of long-term absenteeism in the Philippines, 30%, was almost 4 times higher than OECD countries on average, that is 8%. It was more commonly reported among boys and students in the public schools. Long-term truant, at least once at any education level, tended to score lower by 56 score points in mathematics. Family situations being board and school closures remain the primary reasons for long-term absenteeism. Grade repetition. 1 in every 4 students in the Philippines reported to have repeated the grade at least once, more so among boys and those in public schools. Grade repeaters were the ones who were truant, low achievers, bullied, and had a low sense of belonging at school. Students who repeated a grade at least once in elementary or secondary school scored lower by 53 and 57 points in mathematics, respectively. Student teacher ratio and class size. The average student teacher ratio in the Philippines increased from 26 in 2018 to 30 in 2022. This was higher than OECD average, which is 12. Similar to 2018, the average class size in the Philippines was 43, higher than OECD average, which is 26. Both the student teacher ratio and class size was higher in public schools than in private schools in the Philippines. Education systems that reported lower student teacher ratios and smaller class size generally showed higher mathematics score. Parental involvement in school related activities. Just like in 2018, the parental involvement in school related activities was still high in the Philippines compared to OECD countries on average, considering the COVID 19 related school closures. For instance, 61% of the students were in schools whose school principals reported that at least half of all families volunteered in physical or extracurricular activities. On family support, while the parental involvement was high in the Philippines, the index of family support in the Philippines was negatively and significantly lower than the OECD countries on average. According to the students' report, only about one out of three of their parents took interest in what they had been learning at school, 29%. Asked what they did in school, 31%, encouraged them to get good marks, 33%, and talked with them about their future, 31%, or spent time just talking with them, 32%, in almost everyday basis. Accordingly, only one out of four parents discussed how well they had been doing at school, 24%, and the importance of completing senior high school, 26%. Students in more supportive homes were more likely to perform better in mathematics. A 1 unit increase in the index of family support in the Philippines was associated with a 13-point increase in the mathematics score of students after accounting for their ESCS and their school's ESCS. The family support, especially when provided in a frequent basis, resulted in even greater improvement in students' performance. For instance, eating together every day or spending time talking with children almost every day had increased students' performance in mathematics by 44 score points and 33 score points, respectively. All other forms of family support had increased mathematics performance by at least 13 to 26 score points. In terms of the shortage of educational staff, the percentage of students in the Philippines that were in schools whose principal reported that the school's capacity to provide instruction is hindered by a lack of teaching staff and by inadequate or poorly qualified teaching staff had increased between 2018 and 2022. In 2018, the corresponding proportions were 19% and 8%. A 1 unit increase in the index of shortages of education staff resulted in a decrease in math scores by 6 score points before accounting for the students and schools' socio-economic profile. In terms of the shortage of educational materials, the index of shortage of educational material in the Philippines was relatively high compared to the OECD countries. At least half of the students were in schools whose principal reported that the school's capacity to provide instruction is hindered by a lack of educational materials or inadequate or poor educational materials. A 1 unit increase in the index of shortage of educational materials resulted to a decrease in mathematics performance by 4 score points. Teacher qualification. The number of fully certified teachers in the Philippines was higher than in OECD countries on average, but OECD countries on average had more teachers with specialized education and possess post-baccalaureate degrees. On the attendance to pre-primary education, while the majority of Filipino students, 84%, especially girl students from advantaged backgrounds and students from private schools, reported having attended pre-primary education for at least 1 year, the percentage of those who had not attended increased between 2018 and 2022. Students who attended pre-primary education for at least 1 year but less than 2 years scored 26 points higher than those who did not attend or attended for less than a year. On food security, 12% of students reported that they came to school without eating every day or almost every day. Food insecurity was found to be associated with mathematics performance. On education spending, the average spending per student in the Philippines in US dollars is 11,030, is nine times lower than that across OECD countries, 102,612 US dollars. This only suggests that developing countries such as the Philippines are often under-resourced. Education spending was estimated based on the average cumulative spending per student from 6 years old to 15 years old. On ongoing efforts of the DepEd to improve learner performance under the Matatag Education Agenda, considering all the findings in PISA 2022, DepEd is currently undertaking the following, among others, under the Matatag Education Agenda, the following programs. We have the National Learning Recovery Program and its sub-programs such as the National Math and Reading Programs and National Learning Camp, pilot implementation of the Matatag curriculum, professional development of teachers and school leaders, career progression of teachers, removal of non-teaching tasks, hiring of administrative officers, creation of Learner Rights Protection Office, lobbying for increased funds for school feeding program. On ways to forward, moving forward, DepEd will continue to provide strategic directions to ECCD, LCC, and Tech, strengthen teacher support and train teachers on the Matatag curriculum, implement Catch-up Fridays, which has started last January, launch digital education, and sustain work on the National Learning Recovery Program. This is all, honorable senators. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you for the comprehensive presentation. Senator Bina, any questions to start off?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Siguro, um, Dr. Benito, can you cite examples of anong questions yung tinatanong for math or science? Ano yung, kasi di ba parang, anong type of questions yung kayang sagutin ng estudyante natin?
Meron pong sa PISA test items po, meron po tayong tinatawag na different levels din po on the cognitive levels. So, doon po sa level 1, meron po sana kaming examples talaga para not my own example, para yun talaga po yung part of the PISA. Yes, yes.
Actual? Or...
Yes po, this was released by PISA po. So can you have that?
Can you flash it
Yes.
on the screen so we can all see it, and yung mga hindi makakasagot ho dito, hindi kakain. Walang lunch, walang merienda. No? So, pag hindi mali sagot niyo, hindi ho kayo kakain today.
Yung level 1, level 2, level 3, meron po. Kasi po yung minimum level is level 2. So we can show them the test item.
Comsec, can we flash it, Comsec? During the public presentation of DepEd, I remember you showed a sample question, no? And I'll let Senator Binay comment first before I make my comments. But it's good to it's a good question so that everyone will have appreciation of what PISA is. No? because sometimes we just look at the numbers, but we don't have appreciation of the contents of PISA.
And siguro, Mr. Chairman, habang pine-prepare yung ano, yung questions ho ba dun sa minimum level, na ituturo ho ba yun dun sa mga estudyante natin?
Dr. Benito.
Um, yung PISA items po, when it was developed, it was also a field trial. So kami po yung nag-field trial being the National Center for PISA in the Philippines. We field trialed these test items that was supposed to be given during the main survey. So dahil na field trial po namin yon, at based on that field trial, kinuha po namin yung mga items that are acceptable, which means na yung acceptable items po ay in terms of difficulty level and index of discrimination. Yung index of discrimination po, ang sinasabi lang po noon ay itong item nito ay nakaka-distinguish between the poor performers and the high performers. So ganun po yung analysis ng mga test items na ginagawa during the field trial. And this was sent to the OECD. Lahat po ng countries nag-undergo ng field trial. That was a year, actually po, sa April po kami mag-field trial for the 2025. So we hope that during the field trial ay maganda yung mga resulta rin para yung mga items na actually ang tinitingnan po ito bang items na to ay hindi acceptable o acceptable. Kung hindi po acceptable yon, hindi po yung sinasama sa main survey.
Like, yung, paano ko ba explain yan? Yung, di ba may mga sets of question. Para sa akin kasi, paano masasagot ng estudyante kung hindi yun na ituturo as part of the curriculum? Yeah, Mr. Chairman, maybe we can
May I
recognize.
answer?
Yes, go ahead,
Kasi ano,
Dr.
Olegario from
Olegario.
UP College of Education.
Go ahead.
Kasi kami nakakausap namin ng mga teachers, nakakausap namin ng mga estudyante. Usually, nung nakita nga nila yung PISA, sinasabi nila na, ay, hindi sanay ang mga bata dyan. No? So hindi siya natuturo talaga sa classrooms natin. Kasi basically, yung mga questions sa PISA, ano siya, no, supposedly practical, real life situations, applying mathematics, science, and of course, reading. Sa reading, ang masyado tayong exposed sa, for example, fiction, yung mga ganun, no? Pero yung everyday things na nakita natin sa paligid, graphs, hindi sanay yung mga bata sa ganon. Pagdating sa science, sa math naman, ang math kasi more on ano tayo, minimemorize natin yung formulas, how to solve the problems, may formulas na yung mga yan. Pero pagdating sa PISA, ano siya, i-analyze mo talaga yung problems na i-solve. Pagdating sa science, ganun din, no? Yun nga yung parang nakasulat, di ba? Simple experimentation. Pero basically kasi tayo, ang experimentation natin sa schools, we just follow the steps, di ba? It's like following a cookbook. But here, you have to imagine no, yung kailangan mo imagine kung paano mo sasagutin, experimenting in your mind. No? So kung hindi sanay ang mga bata na nag-experiment sa sarili nila, hindi nila kayang sagutin yon. So basically, yun yung pinaka-core problem. Yun yung when it comes to the questions.
So parang may disconnect in a
Yes.
way.
Sinabi
Yung
ng mga
tinuturo natin sa eskwelahan, doon sa tinatanong sa PISA.
Yes, kasi basically nga dapat ang tinuturo na natin sa eskwelahan ngayon ay solving real life problems. Nandun na tayo authentic learning na tayo, no? So pero kaya sinasabi ng mga teachers, hindi kaya ng mga bata yan. Sabi ko, hindi, kaya nila yan, hindi lang natin na ituturo. Kaya sinasabi na it's unadmissible. What's the term again earlier? I don't know what's the basis for that. Pero basically, yun nga, hindi kaya ng bata dahil hindi natin na ituturo.
Dr. Balagtas, I think you were raising your hands.
Honorable senators and everyone, good morning. I was one of the PISA monitors in 2022. So let me share my observations. Aside from being one of the, I think, three of us were commissioned to be monitors, we also did an analysis of the framework, of the assessment framework of PISA for all the three major areas: reading, mathematics, and scientific literacy, and all the innovative areas like global citizenship, critical thinking, financial literacy, and the like. And for mathematics, for example, because I also did a thorough analysis on the framework of mathematics and compared that with the teacher education program, the policy standards and guidelines of the Commission on Higher Education for those specializing in mathematics. So I examined the framework, and the assessment framework in mathematics, for example, is very multidimensional. Aside from it assesses content and competencies, it also requires embedding of content and competencies in different context dimensions, from personal to occupational to scientific and global context. We are not used to that, meaning it's really applying. You are being tested as to how well you know or proficient you are in your knowledge and in competencies when applied in different contexts. There is also an integration of 21st century skills. In our national assessments, for example, we only emphasize critical thinking, problem solving, and uh, information literacy. But in PISA 2022, because this was introduced only in the recent cycle, they included 8 areas of 21st century skills, and these are as follows: critical thinking is one, creativity, research, and inquiry, self-direction, initiative, and persistence, information use, systems thinking, communication, and reflection. There were 8 21st century skills, but we only emphasize in our national assessments 3. So this is one area. And in our study, we found out that even the PSGs released by the Commission on Higher Education for pre-service teachers, there's limited alignment or capturing of these required 21st century skills. Limited, particularly in inquiry and self-direction, initiative and persistence, and reflection. Thank you.
And would you recommend that we start shifting our methodology or our curriculum parang geared towards that type of ano ba yan, teaching?
First of all, the intention of the K-12 law is to develop Filipino learners who are equipped with 21st century skills and to make them globally competitive. And so if we are really serious about making them globally competitive, I think international benchmarking will do. And so it is, to me, it is important that we look at the assessment frameworks. PISA is really very comprehensive. It gives us a lot of lessons on how we could improve our curriculum just looking at the assessment framework alone. Thank you.
I would also like to add, because your question is, do we need to change the paradigm? We need to change the paradigm. The K-12 is supposedly constructivist paradigm, but it's the implementation that we're not implementing it to the fullest. Like we still tend to be behaviorist in paradigm, no? Meaning more on the memorization side, the task performance would still be more the lower order thinking skills than the application, your application of the knowledge. The way the performance task should be like that, application of the knowledge in problem solving, basically problem solving.
Let me continue with what Senator Binay. You want to please join the table and identify yourself. Okay, are you with the same group? Okay, okay. You can pull a chair and participate. No, we want to get as many opinions and analysis as possible, especially from our experts. I understand you're from the UP College of Education, correct? So, we'll, yeah, please sit so that you'll be comfortable. Please take a seat. Yan. Okay. And then you can identify yourself, your organization, and you can join
I'm
the discussion.
Dr. Erlina Ronda from UPNISMED. That's part of the tri-unit of College of Education, UPIS, and then UPNISMED. And we do a lot of teacher training and observation in the field. And as far as the questions of the sample questions for PISA, they are not in alignment with what is going on in the field. In fact, in our recent professional development, we asked the teachers to bring their quarterly exam and end of year exam, and then we ask them to analyze it in relation to PISA. And almost all of them, 90% is level 1C. So there's no wonder that our achievement is also at the level 1C. And as far as the mathematics content is concerned, we are teaching it. In fact, the question of last is just about ratio, which is taught in the elementary. But as already said, it's in uh, the question is framed within a particular situation. The first release question, that is question number 2. The first question is about also the use of Excel. And our learners do not learn mathematics that uses software. And the question in PISA asks them to manipulate the data using the functionalities of Excel. And we don't have that.
Can we flash the
Question item 1.
question item that Senator Binay requested there? So we'll hand out pieces of paper later on, including the cameramen. No? Pag hindi nyo nasagot yan, walang kakain ngayon. No? But kidding aside, this is the sample question, no, that Senator Binay requested. This is for math, no? Dr. Benito.
Ito yung basic, I mean, ito yung minimal na question.
That's for the level 2. Minimum
Minimum.
proficiency. Yes po.
Can I
Lower.
Okay. Can I continue my? For example, in that question, at our level, the question is just how many red triangles would be there in the next level? That is the kind of questions that our learners are exposed to. But to compare the red and the blue in really as a percentage, I don't think they are exposed to that.
Daling sabihin na there's what, 6 blues,
Yes.
but yung percentage na in relation to the red.
Mhm. Because that is now another situation in which they can apply percentage, which is in geometry.
And then, dun ho tayo parang hindi umaabot
Yeah.
dun sa stage na i-compute mo siya in a percentage
Yes,
form.
you employ an arithmetic concept in geometry. In that case, it's geometry and patterns.
Just to add, one example no, na ginagamit ko example lagi. Ask everyone in this room how big our room is now in square meter, in the area of in square meters of the room. Not all of us will be able to answer correctly. Why? But we've been computing areas for several years from elementary to high school. Why are we not able to simply estimate the area of our room? Because we don't do that, which we should be doing. We should be measuring, diba? Measuring before computing. All we do in our classes is compute. Without the measurement, without the real life situations, real life contexts.
So parang ma'am sinasabi niya, like for example, siguro in a classroom setting, if you're teaching measurements, dapat sabihin ni teacher na parang, oh, let's measure the table.
Yes.
Diba?
In
Or-
centimeters, in millimeters, in inches, lahat yan. But tayo nga sabihin, how far is 100 meters? Sige nga, 200 meters, 500 meters, distance na yan. We study about distance, but we cannot even say how far it is. Not all of us can say that, can answer that. Can we? 500 meters, how far is that? Simple lang yun.
Let me pursue the line of questioning of Senator Binay because this is a good topic. In simple terms, no, I want to keep it simple so that everyone will understand. PISA measures what you know and apply what you know, correct? So that in simple terms, I'm not going to make it complicated. No? So they will test the 15-year-old on what he knows, what he or she knows in terms of math, reading, and science, and apply that knowledge to real world scenarios, correct? Because at the end of the day, when that child graduates, it's the application of knowledge what's important, correct? But in the application of knowledge, you also have to analyze and to think, correct? More than memorize. No? Diba? So, what I'm getting right now from our friends from the UP School of Education is, based on your analysis, our curriculum, both pre-service and at the in DepEd, is focused on memorization. That's based on your analysis, not on application. Is that description correct po?
Yes, not just memorization, but lower order thinking skills.
Low order thinking
So
skills.
we're still more on the traditional type. We may the students may be performing, but the performance task given is more on the singing, dancing, but not really on the performing the mathematical thinking, performing the scientific thinking, performing reading analysis, those levels.
So ma'am, parang would it be safe to assume, well, I'm 50 years old ho. When I was 15, I grew up yun nga i-memorize mo kasi may exam ka the next day and then afterwards hindi mo na alam, 'di ba? Would the same methodology of teaching, ganun pa din ho ba ngayon?
Yes, same, still the same. So, I tried answering the questions, for example, in science. Medyo okay naman ako sa math pero pagdating sa science, sabi ko, I realized that, oh my goodness, so my knowledge in science is so poor. Meaning, I've only memorized the books. I got very good grades in science, but I couldn't answer the questions because I couldn't imagine in my mind how to answer those questions.
So, kasi I have 4 kids and parang I opted to bring them to a non-traditional
Mhm.
school setting. So, like for example, meron ho silang mga kunyari, culinary lessons. I think doon nila ini-incorporate na when you measure, let's say, yung water to mix with doon lumalabas yung application of math, I would assume, and then yung temperature ng oil would probably be the science portion of that simple, program na magluluto lang yung mga bata but they would already incorporate science, math, and
Yes.
reading into that simple event. Ganun ho ba yung, in a way, parang nire-recommend nyo na unti-unti mag-shift to that type of methodology?
But that's a lower level pa. No, that's more on the measuring pa lang eh. So meaning measuring, at least they can imagine how much is 350 milliliter, di ba? 50 milliliter. Eh tayo, yung iba, na-imagine ba yon? We compute volumes. But can students really imagine, for example, how the volume of 500 milliliter or let's say 5,000 milliliters? Gaano kadami yon? Diba? Then may mga problems na isa-solve. Kung hindi natin ma-imagine, paano pa tayo pupunta sa next step? So the first step is really, because, diba, to be able to solve mathematical problems, you need to visualize the problem. So that's our problem.
Yes, Yusek, Attorney Malaluan.
Magandang umaga po, Your Honors. We miss you. Ah, Yun pong, baka po pag-ibahin yung sa curriculum, dun sa mga familiarization materials na produce bilang kasama sa paghahanda nung 2022 ay minap yung content knowledge nung PISA at yung ding curriculum ng Department of Education at nakikita yung mga content knowledge na yon na paksa ng PISA exam doon sa curriculum. So they were able to map it, except for just a few competencies that was not in the same year levels. So naandun sa curriculum yung content knowledge na paksa ng PISA, pero yung sa pamamaraan ng pagtuturo nito, yung learning resources na ginagamit ng Department of Education, pamamaraan ng pagtatanong at kakayahan ng mga guro, doon may gap. At itong exposure ng mga guro at saka ng school leaders and school administrators dito sa panibagong international standards ng pag-deploy ng kaalaman na yon at pag-measure ng kaalaman na yon is a very important exposure that is needed by the education system as a whole, from policy, school management, learning resources. So napakalaki ng kailangang habulin, at kung hindi magkakaroon ng participation sa assessments na ito, in fact, dahil sa katagalang hindi lumalahok sa ganitong pagsusulit, hindi talaga na expose. In fact, kagaya ng binanggit, even uh, the programs in teacher education are not able to keep up with this rapidly changing or evolution of competency standards at the international level.
Mr. Chairman, but in a way, para sa akin, good news na din ho, na kahit papano, kumbaga, naumpisahan natin kasi nabanggit nyo nga ho, parang may content, ano na ba kay placement or whatever. So, at least meron na tayong may naumpisahan na compared to mag-uumpisa pa lang, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Director Andaya.
Thank you, honorable senators. Good morning, everyone. I'm currently the regional director of DepEd NCR, but I was once the director of the Bureau of Curriculum Development, where we reviewed the curriculum, and that's why we came up with the Matatag curriculum. But nowhere in the review did it come out that we focus on the lower level thinking skills. In fact, in the review, there were very important findings. Number one, that there were overlapping of competencies. Number two, that there were misplaced competencies, meaning competencies that should have been in grade 4 perhaps are in grade 7, something like that. And at the same time also, cognitive demand. There's high cognitive demand, meaning the curriculum has has leaned towards more higher order thinking skills than low level thinking skills. And that's what we addressed in the new curriculum. But that I would like to also point to what Yusek Malaluan mentioned, that we need to distinguish between curriculum, delivery, and assessment, because well, from our initial discussions, or even not initial, but in the discussions that we've had regarding PISA or even the National Achievement Test, just found out that our learners and even our teachers, okay, are not familiar with the types of tests that are given by PISA. It's borne by several of the observations we have made during the course of the discussion on international assessments po.
All of us in this room agree that PISA is assessing or testing the right the, what it's testing what our learners should be learning. Correct? Walang debate yan, no? There's no debate that PISA is testing what we should be teaching our children, no? And one of which is how to apply that knowledge. Correct? I think everyone agrees with that. So if everyone agrees with that, then where is the gap? Where is the gap now? Because we all agree that it's testing what our children should be learning, therefore what they should be applying. So where is the gap? Is the gap at the pre-service level, meaning the way our teachers are being taught in college and universities? Is it in our curriculum? Is it in the implementation of the curriculum? So I want to ask our experts. No? Anyone can answer because Senator Binay pointed out a very good topic. Where's the gap then? No, tama kasi yung tinetesting eh. No? We all agree. But where is now the gap? Yes, um, Dr. Padilla, go ahead.
Hello. Thank you, Senator Gatchalian. Um, in the field of education, there is such a thing that we call the intended curriculum, which is the curriculum on paper. Whether it is the pre-matatag full-blown K-12 curriculum or the new matatag curriculum. That's the intended curriculum on paper. And then there is the implemented curriculum. So how much of the curriculum has actually been implemented and how by our teachers in the classroom? Then we go to assessment. That is the learned curriculum. How much of what was supposedly taught was learned? So the PISA results, as well as the CPLM from before, the grade 5, they show us what the learned curriculum is on the part of the kids. So the bigger question is what happens day to day in the classroom. So there is a question of delivery. And if we look at research here and in other countries, when we look at learning outcomes, inevitably what has been shown as the biggest factor is the quality of instruction. And the quality of instruction is linked to teacher quality in terms of knowledge and competencies learned or acquired from pre-service education and in-service training. In fact, there's a very good study, there's a very good paper released by PIDS on teacher education. And if I may be allowed to read some of it, it actually looks at an adapted teacher pathway model that looks at what can be done in the pre-service phase and also in the in-service phase. And I read, for pre-service, we need to attract potential teachers. So we have to select education students, those who would enroll in education as a degree. So that would mean a review of teacher policies as well and ensuring accessibility and affordability. So we have to ask ourselves, how do our TEIs, most of which are underperforming in the LET or have been for many years now underperforming in the LET, how do they screen possible education students? So included as well in the pre-service phase is developing those students. So that involves ensuring quality of TEI programs. So we look at TEIs, their programs, how they're delivered, even the quality of teacher educators like ourselves. And also included there is equipping teachers with theoretical, pedagogical, and 21st century skills. So there's a need to equip teachers, all those, the ones that are expected of teachers to teach our students, which our friends from NISMED have found to be lacking among teachers in the field. Now, if I may continue, in service, now we're talking about teachers in the field now, that would involve recruiting, certifying and hiring new teachers. How do we hire new teachers? Some teachers in the field still report that it's a matter of who you know. That's why I said some, okay? But it also behooves us to look at the left. If you cannot teach in basic education schools without a without a license, then it's safe to assume that most of the teachers practicing in basic ed actually have license. They passed the LET. How come that does not translate to quality instruction and quality learning outcomes? And then the other one is retaining quality teachers. So that would involve supporting teacher needs. And the same paper of PIDS reports that many teachers in the field report that their needs are not adequately met in terms of teaching learning materials or instructional materials that they need, as well as teaching the students better. And these are all from the paper of the uh, Philippine Institute for Development Studies, titled Embracing Challenges, Envisioning Solutions, Advancing Teacher Education and Development in the Philippines, by Sinsay Villanueva and the head himself, Orbeta Jr. December 2023, recently released.
Mr. Chairman. Ma'am, pero yung sa paper curriculum, tama naman po.
I
Oo.
would have to agree with Director Andaya that there is really a clear intent on the part of DepEd to include higher order thinking skills. But our friends from DepEd would also say that time and again, the teachers would say, eto na naman, meron na naman topic, seminar on higher order thinking skills. Meron na naman on art of questioning. Bakit ginagawa ng DepEd? Kasi lumalabas sa test results ng mga bata, hindi pa rin nila na de-demonstrate yung higher order thinking skills. Kaya paulit-ulit, ma'am, sa mga seminars ng DepEd, nagsasawa na yung ibang teachers. Pero meron ganong intent on the part of DepEd.
But in a way, ma'am, I guess siguro moving forward, mahirap po talaga baguhin yung nakasanayan na. But I guess ang sa akin is, how do we teach our new teachers or potential teachers, diba? So meron ho ba kayong convergence with CHED? I mean, showing them the results ng PISA, na baka kailangan pati yung curriculum natin o paano natin tinuturuan yung mga guru natin, kailangan din natin baguhin. May ganun ho bang usapin between DepEd and CHED?
It's, Dr. Briones, Secretary Briones.
The assumption that all 15-year-olds of the world should be tested in the same way and should be the same. And I have noticed also that we need to integrate, to harmonize the PISA objectives with our own national development goals. Do we want to produce mathematicians or scientists who will build atomic bombs to kill millions and millions of people? Do we want to produce learners who will build, who will have factories for arms, for tanks, and all sorts of political trouble? What kind of learners are we going to produce? Only for those who are good in mathematics, good in reading, good in science. But this can be used, as I said, like the snake in the garden of evil in paradise, for good or for evil. And so we have to think in mind, even as we worry, even as we respect PISA standards and try to conform to OECD practices and standards, that we have our own development goals as well. We have our constitution, we have our laws, and there is also pressure not only from various experts around in this room, but even from parents, that perhaps we should also include teaching children good manners and right conduct. We cannot separate technology. We relate mathematics and science with technology, but science and technology without being human, without being humane, can be used, as I said, either for good or for evil. And this is why we cannot just be advising the Department of Education or educational institutions. We have to look at society itself, our constitution, our laws, and as I said, what kind of learners, what kind of humans are we trying to produce? Are we going to produce copies of OECD 15-year-olds when we know that culturally, historically, and in terms of their role in the global community are very, very different? So I was going to say this in my presentation, but I'm tempted to take a step further and to go ahead because of the direction of the discussions. We lecture the DepEd on what they should be doing. We know that the education in the Philippines is segmented. Unlike the performing countries where the Minister of Education, for example, in Southeast Asia, the Minister of Education regulates the schools and the universities which produce the teacher. My favorite writer, one of my favorite writers, Yuval Harari, says that where you have a brilliant student, you can be sure that there is a brilliant and effective teacher. And the discussion is going into that direction. So perhaps Senator Wynne and Senator Nancy may think of expanding, because education, it's not just DepEd. Education is not just your institution. And we always forget and ignore the fact that during the 2018 PISA results showed that there were 20 schools or scores were either equivalent to or higher than the OECD countries. 6 public schools, 14 private schools. And maybe we can, as pointed out by Senator, we can learn uh, from this. So I would imagine that this will not be the last discussion on not only on PISA, but harmonizing PISA with the kind of society we want to build. I am very sure that the PISA, the countries who excelled in PISA can utilize their knowledge of mathematics and science either way. Even in the humanities, you have big debates among artists, among musicians on artificial intelligence, the moral and ethical aspects. So this probably would just be the beginning. Is OECD our model? Do we want to be like OECD? Do we want to conform only to OECD standards? We should not ignore our constitution. We should not ignore our laws. And we should not ignore our culture and our history. We might be focusing on being experts in mathematics, but are we producing human beings? Are we producing humans who get along with their neighbors? Humans who use whatever balance they have between science, technology, which I believe is inseparable to build a better society. Are we assuming that OECD is the model for what our learners should be and the countries from where they came from? So maybe Senator Win and Senator Nancy will prepare for much broader discussions on the matter of education. Thank you. But I
Secretary
will
Briones. And
have my chance later.
yep, but let's segue into your presentation. I understand that SEAMEO Innotech prepared the presentation, and let's segue to that. And then later on, we can go back to DepEd on the topics that we opened later earlier on.
With apologies to my beloved DepEd for interrupting your discussions. I speak as the center director of SEAMEO Innotech, which is an international organization serving the needs of ministers of education of ASEAN member countries, but which is hosted by the Philippine government. Just 3 points. One was, how did we come to a decision to participate in PISA 2018? And the decision later on to even participate in 2022, because PISA, as I said, was established in 2000. We finally decided to participate. Secondly, since the question of Senator Win is, where do you go from here? Maybe we can share the experience of what we did to prepare for 2022. And then my reflections. First, we had the decision to participate in PISA for 2018 and 2022. There were apprehensions, there was a debate, and we exchanged reflections on PISA with Andreas, who developed the from OECD, who developed the test, the examinations on 3 occasions. And the Global Teachers Forum in Dubai, I sat with him in a panel, and also in a international conference in London on how kids and teachers learn, and also in Bangkok, where ASEAN countries sat down with Andreas, exchanged experiences with each other. I have long pointed out that if we are not, if we tend to focus exclusively on PISA, education for PISA, then it can result in politicization of the PISA results as well. The practice of ranking performances of 15-year-olds all over the world may politicize and result into a big political question. Also, I pointed out that in the Philippines, there is a political risk in joining PISA at that time, in 2018, because historically, the results of PISA, Senator Win, correlates also with the results of our own national assessment tests. It is not as if we were ecstatic about our performance on national achievement tests and then we cry because we did not do as well in PISA. There is a clear correlation and connection because I remember Joyce, I remember all the discussions and debates we had, for example, on the results of national assessments for principals, for supervisors, for superintendents, and also for learners. So at the time, we had three choices, and one is we don't participate in PISA at all. Maybe we don't believe in the validity of comparing, as I said, 15-year-olds in the same manner with different histories, with different traumas, with different political exposures altogether. And the other alternative was we noticed that India, for example, rested for a few years after dissatisfaction. There was so much outcry, dissatisfaction with PISA results, and for 1 or 2 seasons, and then they came back. They are not yet. They have not yet participated because they are preparing for PISA. PISA in my mind, PISA forever. And then the third alternative is to participate immediately. I was for resting and for preparing. Same with Senator Win. But Peru, for example, one of the countries which ranked very, very, very low in PISA, encouraged us to say, do not stop. You have to be, you must track what is happening. And so even with the risks involved, we wanted to signal our determination to confront the challenge of quality of basic education as a country, to take advantage of the assessment of international assessment experts. Although I would humbly suggest that when they prepare or formulate their questions, they invite those also from non-OECD countries and their experience. These are non-OECD people, and they shared a lot of wisdom with us. And to benchmark our performance in terms of international standards, assuming that such international standards are effective and helping maintain peace, harmony, and happiness for all of humanity. And also to generate important data for diagnostics, which we did. And Nelia and Joyce are familiar with what we did with the 2018 results, remedial action, targeting, and what the Senator Win and Nancy are doing is the monitoring side and the assessment side. Now, it was very, very vibrant debate that we engaged in. And so we did some consultations. As I said, I was for resting for a while. And but what came out in our consultation was that a great many of our advocates and our education warriors believed, and also in DepEd itself, that we should continue. The PISA 2021 was rescheduled to 2022 because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And again, we debated with COVID and all, should we still participate in PISA, because COVID obviously affected the entire country and education in particular. So what did we do to prepare for PISA 2022? First, we participated in a regional conference on PISA participation. All of us, many of the countries of the world, are all very engrossed with PISA. And so we participated actively in a conference in Thailand, in Bangkok, in cooperation with OECD PISA, and the scores, the performances of the Philippines were analyzed. And then we developed also a professional program, Nelia knows this very well, on program on assessment with focus on PISA. And we organized a consortium, including PNU, PMEA, the LSU, and other, as I said, frontliners and education groups here in the Philippines. As Secretary of Education at that time, I planned to visit the 20 schools because we had been exerting efforts to inform the public that there are 20 schools who did very well, 6 of which were public schools, and whose scores either exceeded or equaled OECD scores, and you have 14 private schools. And as Win said, Senator Win, forgive the familiarity, said we can learn. For example, one official was asking me, why is Baguio, why is Cordillera scoring very high in English? And I answered the politician. The answer is obvious. Historically, they learned English at a very, very early age. And then we developed materials for public school teachers and learners. And these were publicly available. We curated supplementary sources and made available through DepEd learning management system. The familiarization materials were used for the regions for their field preparations. It was really a deliberate program considering the results of 2018 PISA. And unfortunately, my plan to visit the 20 schools was interrupted by the transition and the change in leadership. I visited 2 regions, including Baguio and Cordillera. I was there. Yes, and I talked with the teachers. I visited the Rizal Science High School, which had the highest scores, and the factors there which influenced the quality. One of the major factors was the clear support of the congressman and the mayor for the Science High School, and this is Vico Soto and Congressman Romulo. And in terms of equipment, they went beyond the supplemented DepEd financial support with their own support, and I was very impressed. And I talked to the principals. What is your secret? How come you are doing well? And so on. So I would like to say that for PISA 2018, we were able to obtain a baseline on the proficiency level of our 15-year-old learners, assuming that all 15-year-olds all over the world, different countries, different economies, must be at a particular level, which, of course, we can assess further. And the PISA 2022 results, Senator Wynn talks about the good news aspect, showed resilience in the face of the difficulties brought about by COVID, with mathematics and reading improving by 2 and 7 point scores respectively, and science declining by only 1 point score. And the result among OECD countries, the OECD countries declined by an average of 15, 10, and 2 point scores, 1 point only for the Philippines. Reading and science respectively also was better. Among our neighbors, there was significant decline in reading and science in Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia. Nonetheless, we say, we admit and we recognize that our scores remain at the low proficiency levels set up by OECD. Education quality does not transform overnight, but the PISA 2018 and 2022 results, combined with other historical, we have to take it in context. How did we perform in other assessment results, which we ourselves developed? And as I pointed out earlier, there is a correlation. And also the acceleration which all of us, the senators and our experts and our supporters are saying, we can further improve our preparations and perhaps hopefully our scores, prayerfully our scores, with the integration of PISA and other assessment results in the enhanced basic education information system. Have this at the back of our mind. And also large-scale assessment results should be an integral component of the planning, the monitoring, and evaluating standards of DepEd, which we also initiated. Also, we would welcome and we should encourage inter-school exchanges. And you're starting this, Senator. What's the secret? What is the formula of these high-performing regions, these high-performing schools? And obviously, it's not just DepEd. It's not just the institutions involved in educations like CHED and CHED and TESDA. It's also political support, local political support, as well as national support. And this is very clear. And also the other factors which influence the mental readiness of the child, the capacity. If DepEd, because it's always a decision, it's always a debate, if we decide to participate in PISA 2025, the familiarization materials provided and which were developed for PISA 2022 should be updated in the light of recent developments and deployed soonest because we only have 1 year left. Other countries prepare for PISA for a much longer. The obsession, if I may say so, with PISA is very, very intense and very, very competitive. And we ask ourselves, is that what we want? Is this how we want our learners to develop? And so I repeat what I said, beg your pardon. There is a need to harmonize PISA results and objectives with national goals on education, the kind of learners we want to develop. Admittedly, we must recognize, and of course, we all know that it's not the only measure of the quality of education of this country of ours. There was a time when I'm 83 years old, and it took such a long time for us to produce a Miss Universe. And there was always crying and weeping. Our Miss Philippines is so beautiful. Why is she not winning, etc. And when finally did it after so many years in winning Miss Universe, you had to have parades and so on to celebrate. We have to consider our development goals as defined by our Constitution, which places education at the top of budgetary decisions, our laws, and the kind of society the kind of humans that we are trying to develop, the kind of people whom we want to, who aspire to inherit this country of ours and this world of ours. Thank you, Senator Win. Thank you, Senator Nancy.
Thank you. Thank you, Secretary Liling, for sharing with us your thoughts on PISA. And before we field questions, I'd like to call on our other resource persons so that they can share with us their thoughts and opinions and also suggestions. We'll do the rounds. No? We'll start off with PNU, Dr. Marlene Balagtas. If you have any insights on the 2022 PISA and also recommendations.
Yes, thank you, Senator Win. We actually shared our position paper, two-page position paper with Ms. Hazel. But let me share what we put there for everyone here in the whole. Well, the recent international large-scale assessments such as TEAMS 2019 or 2018 and the Southeast Asia Primary Learning Metrics in 2019 and the PISA 2018 have shown the multidimensionality of the Philippine education crisis. The students' dismal performance in mathematics, science, and reading cannot only be attributed to poor teacher quality or low expenditure in education, but also to limited school and home learning resources, inadequate preschool education, and low parental engagement in early literacy. It does not also help that there appears to be a mismatch between the language of the test and the student's home language. In addition to students' misbehavior, lack of sense of belonging in school, and low socioeconomic background. PISA 2022 confirmed that less than a quarter of the students from the Philippines meet the minimum proficiencies in mathematics, science, and reading for their age level. Aside from corroborating the results of PISA 2018, PISA 2022 results showed the impact of the pandemic and the use of gadgets and technology on students' learning. The Philippine Normal University raises three issues from the PISA 2022 results and recommends actions to address them. The first issue is on limited early literacy and inadequate home literacy. The Philippines has one of the shortest pre-primary education, only 1 year as opposed to 2 to 3 years in high-performing countries. Thus, Filipino learners begin falling short of expected competencies as early as grade 3. Moreover, Filipino parents have low engagement with their children's learning and have limited access to learning materials, if at all. Having an early start in education is a strong predictor of success in PISA and other international large-scale assessments. Similarly, parental engagement, home literacy, and availability of home resources correlate positively with better performance in mathematics. Our recommendation: there is a need to implement comprehensive literacy programs that focus on reading, mathematical, and scientific literacy from an early age. Learning must start as early as possible at home and in municipal and barangay daycare centers and nurseries. Early childhood teachers specializing in early reading and numeracy currently lack distinct licensing. Instead of educators trained for upper grades, Instead, educators trained for upper grades are permitted to teach in early grades. Therefore, it is recommended to review RA 7836. This is the Philippine Teachers Professionalization Act of 1994 to implement licensing based on the Department of Education's key stages. Key stage 1, that's K to grade 3. Key stage 2, that's for grades 4 to 6. Key stage 3, that's grade 7 to 10, and key stage 4, that's grade 11 and 12.
To encourage a culture of reading, both in schools and at home, the government should ensure that all schools and even communities have libraries where students have access to quality textbooks and literacy materials. The disadvantaged learners must likewise be provided with home learning resources. To ensure a sufficient number of qualified and well-trained early childhood teachers, the country needs to strengthen and promote the Bachelor of Early Childhood Education program and require a licensure examination for its graduates for teacher quality. The second issue that we raised is on poor learning environment. PISA 2022 showed that the Philippines has one of the most unfavorable disciplinary climates for studying mathematics. About 29% of Filipino students demonstrate the most common disciplinary problems that include inattentiveness. The Philippines also ranks high in bullying, tardiness, absenteeism, and grade repetition. Another source of distraction is the use of digital devices for social media and gaming, resulting in poor performance. About 41% of Filipino students were distracted by digital devices compared to 27% in Singapore and 14% in Vietnam and 30% in OECD countries. About 37% of our Filipino students were distracted by other students using digital devices during math class compared to just 21% in Singapore, 13% in Vietnam, and 25% in OECD countries. PISA 2022, however, showed that the students who spent up to 1 hour per day of learning on digital devices at school outperformed those who did not by 14 points. So that's OECD report. Our recommendation, therefore, is to develop guidelines for cell phone use in the classroom. Unnecessary use of cell phones in class should be banned to reduce distractions. Schools need to implement programs to increase students' ability to self-regulate their use of gadgets. Establish comprehensive support for research aimed at addressing the evolving challenges of classroom discipline, particularly in response to technological advancements, bullying, absenteeism, and grade repetition. Additionally, prioritize the development of a centralized national database to store and provide access to these crucial studies. Our third issue, the mismatch between and among the medium of instruction, the language of the test, and the language spoken by the students at home most of the time. The language of instruction in mathematics and science is a controversial and contentious issue given its impact on student learning outcomes. PISA has shown that students who speak the language of the test almost always at home perform better. Our recommendation: national policies must be data-driven and research-based. There is a need for more intensive studies to define the best language policy for schools, particularly in the teaching of mathematics and science. While theories show that using the mother tongue in the early grades facilitates learning, its implementation is problematic and causes another layer of difficulty as students transition from using the mother tongue to English in learning grade 4 mathematics and science. We conclude by saying that PISA 2022 revealed the Philippines' dismal performance in mathematics, science, and reading is a confluence of many factors which requires a whole society and systemic approach. A piecemeal and disjointed solution will not create the desired results. As disruptions occur more frequently, an effective education system must be defined by how it manages technological change and blended modalities, and how policymakers and education leaders find the right balance between risk and opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Balagtas. We call on UP College of Education, represented by Dr. Olegario. Any comments aside from the ones you mentioned earlier?
Okay. We don't have a presentation, but I think we've been stating our thoughts. I for earlier we were talking about the implementation. No? So the problem is in the implementation, and how are we going to solve this? I believe that it's not the seminars. No, not the. We can have in-service trainings, but should be in action. If we want to teach our students how to apply the knowledge and skills in context, that's also how we are going to train our teachers. 1 week seminar is not enough. No, it should be more on mentoring the teachers. No, instead of having observations, for example, we mentor them on how to implement the curriculum properly. No, so we cannot change the whole faculty, right? When it comes to teacher quality. Tapos na screen na natin sila, nakapasa sila ng let, but we can strengthen the in-service training. But it's not the 1 week training na, ayun, ano na naman, no? High order thinking skills na naman. Pero more on talks and probably workshops. Pero ang kailangan talaga yung lessons, doon tayo pupunta sa day-to-day activities. Hindi yung mga bonggang observations, but daily practices ng mga teachers. Doon tayo pupunta kasi yun yung area na pwede nating ma-solve. Paano ba tinuturo? 'Di ba? Kailangan ba ng maraming materials? Of course, kailangan. Pero hindi naman, hindi, yung mga materials naman nandiyan eh. Like, example, ang ruler. Saan natin ginagamit ang rulers natin? Filipinos. In Philippine classrooms. Did you ever use your ruler to measure, for example, millimeters, centimeters, inches, feet? Ginamit ba? Probably some good schools did that, but not all schools. 'Di ba? Usually, tingnan niyo, 'di ba tinatanong ko kayo, anong reaction ninyo? Tumatawa kayo kasi yun ang nangyayari sa schools natin. So we have very good schools in, for example, in Metro Manila. Kasi nasa Metro Manila ako, 'di ba? So nakikita ko na yung good schools in Metro Manila train their teachers well. And it's not just yung seminar, certificates. 'Di ba nandun tayo, binibilang natin yung certificates and seminars that we have. Minsan kahit hindi nag-attend ng seminar or absent naman talaga, may certificate pa rin, people get promoted, no? But hindi yun eh. Dapat nakikita natin talaga yung improvement. Teachers spend too much time on RPMS, for example. Yung mga ano nila, not just to prove that they are of quality. But will that show quality? 'Di ba yung RPMS meaning portfolios of teacher, they have to take pictures of their activities in class. Hindi yun ang quality eh. 'Di ba? When we talk about teacher quality, we really have to mentor the teachers in the classroom. And yung nagme-mentor, alam niya talaga kung anong kailangan gawin, no? And that's, again, yung application level, higher order thinking skills, yung proper implementation of the intended curriculum. Yun. And as a reaction to Dr. Briones then, yung problem na yung mathematics and science na parang gagamitin for, when we teach math and science, for example, we can teach that with those subjects with values. No, so in context and with values, ganun din, no? Literacy, when we have high levels of literacy, our citizens will be able to, for example, identify fake news, propaganda, manipulations. No, so having all those competencies will help us as a country to become better individuals and to have a better nation. Okay, that's all.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Oligario. We call on PBED, represented by Mr. Lawrence Malasa. Yeah.
Good morning. Good day, everyone, especially to our Honorable Senator Win and Senator Nancy. Allow me to read our statement in response to the performance of our country with regards to the 2022 PISA results. The country's dismal ranking in the 2022 PISA for the second time is a clear indication that much work still needs to be done. The poor performance of our learners is not just a problem of education alone, but our country as a whole. The weaknesses in our basic education system will eventually translate into the weakness of our workforce, affecting our productivity and which is our key source for our economic growth and competitiveness. Our learnings from the recent PISA results should drive us to urgently address learning gaps and implement remediation programs properly so that our learners will not be left behind. Sufficient support must also be provided for our teachers and to our schools so that we could foster a better learning environment. As the voice of business in education reform, we hope to rally once more our partners in the industry, government, and academe to take action for education through the window of opportunity that we have in the ongoing work of the Second Congressional Commission on Education, or EDCOM 2. Now more than ever, the PISA results show the dire need of Filipino learners of our full support. The state of education in the Philippines demands immediate attention, collective effort, and a commitment to improvement so that we can give our children the best learning experience that they deserve. Thank you po.
Thank you. Thank you to PBED. Dr. Antonio Del Carmen of PAPSCO, Philippine Association of Private Schools, Colleges, and University, who's a member of COCOPEA and the
Yes, Senator. Good morning, Senator Nancy, Senator Vin. And well, we yet are to craft in unofficial position paper, but we just would like to express that the private education institutions are very much concerned and alarmed, but not surprised on the results of PISA. No, we have been harping on delivering quality education, and there are so many components that are really affecting our inability, no, to deliver quality education. And I just would like to focus on a few of them. No, one of these is of course the overcrowding of our schools. No, we need to try to harmonize or maximize the limited resources that our country has. No, we know that it's a mandate of the government to provide education for all. No, but the private sector is also here to complement that role of government. No, so maybe it's about time that we continue discussing how we can pursue complementarity as far as delivering quality education is concerned. No? We talk about absorptive capacities of public and private schools, and maybe that's where we can start our discussions. No, we're happy that we are now discussing with DepEd on a framework on complementarity, and we would like to extend that discussion not only in the DepEd level, but also in the Tibet and in the higher education level. No? Of course, there's also our problem on teachers. No, we have been talking about the reorientation, reskilling, retooling, or the upskilling of our teachers. No, but at the same time, we also have problems in the private sector on the pirating of our teachers in the public, the migration of our teachers from private to public. No, which again creates a problem for the private education sector. No? So we just would like to focus on those 2 points at this point, because we know that it takes a community really to educate a child, no? And we need to approach this on a more holistic manner, no? Pero isa-isa lang, medyo mahina ang kalaban, no? Marami tayong problema sa ating bansa, no? But I think if we can really sit down together, both the public and the private, so that we can find a way to truly complement the limited resources that we both have